face mad.
What do you mean?
Your face looks mad. You're all like...
Maybe I look like this because you're annoying.
How am I being annoying?
You sitting there like doing your little stories. I'm trying to study. I just came home. I need to study.
But you forgot our stories. We used to play together all the time. Remember the stories of the camel?
The camel?
The camel and the cat? How the camel got his hump?
Oh, yeah. He swallowed a basketball? Wasn't that it?
No! Obviously, he got it because he wasn't working.
The camel.
Judith says the camel lived in the middle of the desert because she did not want to work, and besides, she was a howler herself. She ate sticks and thorns and tamarisks and milkweed and prickles, most excruciatingly idle, and when anybody spoke to her, she just said, "Humph, humph." Judith says she says nothing else. Amanda. Presently the horse came to her on Monday morning with a saddle on his back and a bit in his mouth and said, "Camel, oh camel, come out and trot like the rest of us." Humph. Then dog says, "Oh camel, camel, come and fetch and carry like the rest of us." Humph. "I'll go away and tell the man." Then the ox came. "Camel, oh camel, come and plow like the rest of us." Humph. "I'll go and tell a man." The man says, "Horse, dog, ox, 3. Oh, 3, I'm very sorry for you, with the world so new and all, but that hump thing in the desert can't work, or she would have been here by now. So I'm going to leave her alone, and you must work double time to make up for it." The horse, the dog, and the ox just grumbled and
Jen of all deserts, is it right for anyone to be idle with the world so new and all?
Certainly not.
Well, there's a thing in the middle of your howling desert, and she's a howler herself with a long neck and long legs. And she hasn't done a stroke of work since Monday morning. She won't trot.
Whew, that's my camel for all the gold in Arabia. What does she say about it?
She says, and she won't fetch and carry.
Does she say anything else?
"Only hump, and she won't plow."
Very good. I'll hump her if you will kindly wait a minute.
The Djinn rolled herself up in her dust coat and took a bearing across the desert and found the camel most excruciatingly idle, looking at her own reflection in a pool of water.
My long and bubbly friend, what's this I hear of you doing no work, with the world so new and all?
Humph.
You've given the 3 extra work ever since Monday morning, all on account of your excruciatingly idleness.
Humph.
I shouldn't say that again if I were you. You might say it once too often.
Humph.
But no sooner had she said that than she saw her back, that she was so proud of, puffing up into a great big lolloping hump.
Do you see the reflection in this pool of water? Turn it around. Turn the camel around. Do you see the reflection in this pool of water? That your very own hump that you've brought upon your very own self by not working? Today is Thursday and you've done no work since Monday, when the work began. Now you're going to work.
"How can I with this hump on my back?"
That's made an all-purpose, all because you missed those 3 days. You will be able to work now for 3 days without eating because you can live on your hump. And don't ever say I didn't do anything for you. Come out of the desert and go 3 and behave. Hump yourself.
And the camel humped herself, humped all, and went away to join the 3. And from that day to this, the camel always wears a hump.
Once upon a time, on a deserted island on the shore of the Red Sea, there lived a Parsi from whose hat the rays of the sun were reflected in more than extraordinary splendor.
More than extraordinary splendor, O best beloved.
And the Parsee lived by the Red Sea with nothing but his hat and his knife and a cooking stove of the kind that you must particularly never touch. And one day he took flour and water and currants and plums and sugar and things and made himself one cake which was 2 feet across and 3 feet thick.
It was a superior constable. That's magic.
And he put it on the stove because he was allowed to cook on that stove.
And he baked it till it was all done brown and smelt sentimental.
But just as he was going to eat it, there came down to the beach from the
Altogether uninhabited interior one rhinoceros with a horn on his nose, 2 piggy eyes, and few manners.
In those days, the rhinoceros skins fitted him quite tight. There was no wrinkles in it anywhere. He looked exactly like Noah's Ark rhinoceroses, but of course much bigger.
All the same, he had no manners then and has no manners now, and he will never have any manners.
How?
And the Parsee left that cake and climbed to the top of the palm tree with nothing on but his hat, from which the rays of the sun were always reflected in more than extraordinary splendor.
And I upset the oil stove with my nose, and the cake rolled on the sand, and I spiked that cake on the horn of my nose, and ate it, and went away, waving my tail to the desolate and exclusively uninhabited interior, which abuts on the islands of Mazarandian, Socorta, and the promontories of the larger equinox.
Then I came down from my palm tree and put the stove on its legs, reciting the following sloka, which as you have not heard, I will proceed to relate. Them that takes cakes, which Parsee man bakes, makes dreadful mistakes. And there was a great deal more in that than you would think.
Because 5 weeks later there was a heat wave in the Red Sea, and everybody took off the clothes they had.
Leave your clothes on, Judith. It's only a story.
Oh, Amanda, you're such an adult. Oh, all right. The Parsee took off his hat, but the rhinoceros took off his skin and carried it over his shoulder as he came down to the beach to bathe.
Presently, the Parsee came by and found the skin, and he smiled one smile that ran all around his face 2 times. Then he danced 3 times around the skin and rubbed his hands.
And then I went to my camp, filled my hat with cake crumbs, for Parsee never ate anything but cake, and never swept out his camp. I took that skin, I shook that skin, I scrubbed that skin and rubbed that skin, just full of old, dry, stale cake, tickly cake crumbs, and some burned currants, like as it could possibly hold.
Then he climbed to the top of his palm tree and waited for the rhinoceros to come out of the water and put it on.
Then
And the rhinoceros did. And the rhinoceros did.
He buttoned it up with the 3 buttons, and it tickled like cake crumbs in bed.
Then he wanted to scratch, but that made it worse.
And then he lay down on the sand and rolled and rolled and rolled.
And every time he rolled, the cake crumbs tickled him worse and worse and worse.
Then he ran to the palm tree and rubbed and rubbed and rubbed against it.
He rubbed so much and so hard that his skin went into great folds over his shoulder and another fold underneath, where the buttons used to be. But he rubbed the buttons off. He rubbed some more folds over his legs.
And it spoiled his temper. But it didn't make the least difference to the cake crumbs.
They were inside his skin, and they tickled.
So he went home very angry indeed, and horribly scratchy.
And from that day to this day, every rhinoceros has great folds in his skin and a very bad temper on account of all the cake crumbs inside.
But the Parsee came down from his palm tree wearing his hat, from which the rays of the sun were reflected in more than extraordinary splendor.
More than extraordinary splendor.
Packed up his cooking stove and went away to the direction of Orotavo, Amygdala, and upland meadows of Anantarivo, and the marshes of Sunapat.
Amanda, remember the sing-song of the old man kangaroo?
Judith, I'm too tired for that one. All that running?
Please, it's my very bestest favorite of all times.
That's what you said about how the rhinoceros got his skin.
Please, oh please.
Okay, are you ready back there in the deep recesses of my imagination?
Ready.
Not always was the kangaroo as now we do behold her, but a different animal with
Not
4
always
short
was the
legs.
kangaroo as
She
now
was
we
gray
do
and she was
behold
woolly, and her
but a
pride
different
was
animal with
inordinate.
4
And
short
she
legs.
danced on an outcrop
She
in the
was
middle
gray
of
and she was
Australia,
woolly,
and she
and her
went to
pride was
Little Nag.
inordinate. And
She went to
danced on
Nag
the
at 6
outcrops of the
before
middle of
breakfast,
Australia,
saying,
and she went to
Make
Little
me
Nag.
different from all
she
the
went to
other
Nag at
animals.
6
Like
before
this
breakfast,
afternoon.
saying,
Make
Up
me
jumped
different
Nag
from
from
all
her
the
seat
other
and on
animals
a sand
like
flat and shouted,
Okay.
Go
Go
away!
away!
She was gray and she was woolly,
She
and
was
her
gray
pride
and she
was
was woolly,
inordinate.
and her pride
She
was
danced on the
inordinate. She
rock
danced
ledge
on the
of the
rock
middle
ledge
of
in the middle of
Australia,
Australia, and she went to the middle of nagging.
and
She went to nagging and ate after breakfast, saying,
breakfast, saying,
Make me different from all other animals. Make me also wonderfully popular by 5 this afternoon.
Go away!
Go away!
She was gray and she was woolly, and her pride was inordinate, and she danced on the sandbanks in the middle of Australia, and went to the big Nagong. She went to Nagong at 10 before dinner time,
She went to
saying,
Nagong at 10 before dinner time,
Make
saying,
me popular and wonderfully run after by
Make me
5
different from all other animals. Make me popular.
Up jumped
wonderfully run
Nagong
after
from
by
her
5
bath
this
in the salt
afternoon.
pans and
Up jumped
shouted,
Nagong from her
Yes,
bath
I
in the
will.
salt pans
Nagong,
and
call
shouted,
Dingo. Dingo,
I will.
Dingo,
Nagong,
yellow
call
dog,
Dingo.
Dingo. Amanda, you're Dingo.
Dingo. Dingo.
You're determined to make me
Yellow
run,
dog Dingo.
aren't you, Judith?
Amanda, you're Dingo.
Yeah.
You're determined to
Dingo,
make me
Dingo.
run.
Always
Aren't you,
hungry,
Judith?
dusty in the sunshine.
Dingo.
I want to
Yellow dog Dingo. Always hungry, dusty in the sunshine.
show me
fine.
kangaroo.
We got voiceover.
It's fun.
Dingo, wake up, Dingo. Do you see that fair woman dancing on an ash pit? She wants to be popular and very truly run after. Dingo, make her so. Up jumped Dingo, yellow dog Dingo, and said,
What? The cat rabbit.
She wants to be popular.
Oh, friend Dingo, yellow dog Dingo, always hungry, grinning like a coal scuttle, and ran after Dingo.
Off with the brown
What? That cat rabbit. All friend Dingo,
She ran to the
yellow dog
desert.
Dingo, always hungry, grinning like a cold scuttle, ran after kangaroo.
Off went the proud kangaroo on her 4 little legs like a bunny.
She ran through the desert, she ran through the mountains, she ran through the salt pans, she ran through the reed bed, she ran through the blue gum, she ran through
She
the
had to.
spinifex, she ran till her
Still
front
ran
legs ached.
kangaroo, the old kangaroo. She ran through the long grass. She ran through the short grass. She ran through the
I know it's me.
Okay.
She ran to her hind legs.
She has to. You can stop. It's okay.
Still ran Dingo, yellow
At
dog
page
Hey,
10.
recording!
Top of page 10.
never getting farther. And they came to the wall gone.
All right, go ahead.
Now, there wasn't any
Dingo,
bridge, and there
wake up,
wasn't any
Dingo.
ferry
Do
boat.
you see
The
that
kangaroo
fair
didn't know
woman
how to
dancing
get
on
over
an
it,
ash
so she
pit?
stood on her legs.
She has to. Finish the rest
She hopped through the
when we come
thunder.
back.
She hopped through the thunder. She hopped through the desert in the middle of Australia.
of them chasing each other, I will make the everybody.
Barnyard, and she hopped through your
Yeah, just chase each other.
Chase, we don't gotta talk.
The legs growing longer.
And she walked
No, you have,
much.
He says,
you have to go around the side. Like, go
Yeah.
like this. When you take it off,
I'm
go
wondering what in the world, or out of it, made the kangaroo hop.
Yeah, she
oh.
has, just keep doing it. There'll be some good ones.
This is too funny.
Don't do it. Actually, do it pretty slowly.
Yeah,
Yeah, it ain't gotta be fast. Alright, and go.
and just keep going. Keep
It's like they sink into the sand. They're like,
It
No.
will fade.
alright, 3, 2, 1, go.
Thank goodness that's finished.
Then sending dog. He was always
Oh, you. Oh, go ahead.
Yo, I can do it real fast. At least let him get like 3 or 4.
You have to get at least 4 laps in.
She's
Oh,
chasing.
they getting really slow. They gon'
Okay, and this next one, switch it out with the orange kangaroo because wouldn't Judith come in?
Yeah, orange kangaroo now.
Yeah, switch it out with the orange one now. Yeah, yeah. Ooh,
There we go.
director mode, am I right?
Oh, you better not say that.
Yes, I wish I had a
What?
Alright.
charm.
Now,
But this is
take them out.
Okay, yeah, and then.
Now punch 'em.
Wait, hold on, before you do it. Okay, so you can just yeet skeet the dingo down.
Dingo, yeet the
The
dingo.
down. And bring up the brown kangaroo and make them face each other where they're like talking. Because they talk to each other or something.
With the dingo.
The brown,
No, the
one.
the brown kangaroo and the orange one have to talk to each other.
Turn the orange one down a little, down.
There you go.
Period. Okay. So just leave them there, kind of bob them up and down like they talking. Yes.
And then keep it there for
Wait,
a
you
little
should
bit longer.
turn the brown one because the brown one's stick matches the brown.
Yeah.
So turn the orange one back around. And then switch hands.
elephant's child.
You'd be a marvelous kid if you let me go to sleep.
In the high and far off times, the elephants.
The marvelous kid is not going to let me sleep.
In the high and far off times, the elephant, oh best beloved.
Oh, best beloved.
The elephant, oh best beloved, had no trunk. He had only a blackish, bulgy nose, as big as a boot, that he could wriggle about from side to side. But he couldn't pick up things with it. But there was one elephant, a new elephant, an elephant's child, who was full of satiable curiosity, and that means he asked ever so many questions. And he lived in Africa, and he filled all Africa with his satiable curiosity. He asked his tall aunt, the ostrich, why her tail feathers grew just so, and his tall aunt, the ostrich, spanked him with her hard, hard claw.
Oh boy.
No fair.
Elephant's child. Oh, our best beloved Rudyard Kipling says, I spank you, so I spank you.
Oh boy.
He asked his tall uncle, the giraffe, what made his skin spotty.
And his tall uncle the giraffe spanked him with his hard, hard hook.
Oh boy.
And still he was full of satiable curiosity.
He asked his broad aunt,
Ha, Rod, you can say that again.
the hippopotamus, why her eyes were red. And his broad aunt, the hippopotamus, spanked him with her broad, broad hook.
Ouch! And still he was full of satiable curiosity.
One fine morning in the middle of the procession of the equinoxes, this satiable elephant's child asked a new fine question that he had never asked before.
What does the crocodile have for dinner?
Hush.
Oh, Kolo Kolo bird sitting in the middle of the Weta Bay fern bush. My father has spanked me, my mother has spanked me, and all my aunts and uncles have spanked me for my satiable curiosity. And still, I want to know what the Kolo Kolo crocodile has.
Go to the banks of the great green gray greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees, and find out.
That very next morning, when there was nothing left of the equinoxes, because the procession had proceeded according to preceding, he went away a little warm, but not at all astonished, eating melons and throwing the rind about, because he could not pick it up. He went from Grahamstown to Kimberley, and from Kimberley to Comus Country, and from Comus Country he went east by north, eating melons all the time, till at last he came to the banks of the great gray green great sea Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees.
Precisely as Kolo Kolo bird had said.
Now you must know and understand, O best beloved, that till that very week, and day, and hour, and minute, the satiable elephant's child had never seen a crocodile, and did not know what one was like. It was all his satiable curiosity.
Excuse me, but have you seen such a thing as a crocodile in these promiscuous parts?
Have I seen a crocodile? What will you ask me next?
Excuse me, but could you kindly tell me what he has for dinner?
I uncoil myself from this very quickly from this rock and spank you with my scalesome, flailsome tail.
That is odd, because my father and mother, and my uncle and aunt, not to mention my other aunt, the hippopotamus, have spanked me for my satiable curiosity, and I suppose this is the same thing. Bye, bicolored python rock snake, bye.
The elephant's child went on, a little warm, but not at all astonished, eating melons and throwing the rind about, because he could not pick it up, till he trod on what he thought was a log of wood at the very edge of the great gray green greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees. But it was really me, a crocodile, oh best beloved, and the crocodile winked one eye, like this.
Excuse me, but do you happen to have seen a crocodile in these promiscuous parts?
Come hither, little one, why do you ask such things?
Excuse me, my father has spanked me, my mother has spanked me, not to mention my tall aunt the ostrich, and my tall uncle the giraffe, who can kick ever so hard, as well as my broad aunt the hippopotamus, and including the bicolored right-thigh snake, with the scalesome, flailsome tail, and just the vent, who spanks harder than any of them. It's quite all the same to you. I don't want to be spanked anymore.
Come hither, little one, and I'll whisper.
The elephant's child put his head down close to the crocodile's musky, tusky mouth.
And the crocodile caught him by his little nose.
Which up to that very week, day, hour, and minute had been no bigger than a boot, though much more useful.
I think today I'll begin with Elephant's Child.
I know, you're hurting me.
My young friend, if you do not now, immediately and instantly, pull as hard as ever you can. It is my opinion that your acquaintance with the large patterned leather ulster
By this, he meant the crocodile.
will jerk you into yonder limpid stream before you can say Jack Robinson.
This is the way all bicolored python rock snakes always talk.
This is too much for me.
Rash and inexperienced traveler, we will now seriously devote ourselves to a little high tension, because we do not, it is my impression, that the yonder self-propelling man of war with the armored plated upper deck will permanently violate your future career.
Oh, best beloved, this is the way all bicolored python rock snakes always talk.
Thank you.
Elephant's Child was kind to his poor pulled nose and wrapped it up in cool banana leaves and hung it in the great gray green greasy Limpopo to cool.
What are you doing that for?
Excuse me, but my nose is badly out of shape and I'm waiting for it to shrink.
Then you will have to wait a long time. Some people don't know it's good for them.
The Elephant's Child sat there for 3 days waiting for his nose to shrink, but it never grew any shorter, and besides, it made him squint, for oh, best beloved, you will see and understand that thanks to have today. At the end of the 3rd day, a fly came and stung him on the shoulder, and before he knew what he was doing, he lifted up his trunk and hit that fly dead with the end of it.
Vantage number 1. You couldn't have done that with a mere smear nose. Try and eat a little now.
Before he thought what he was doing, the Elephant's Child put out his trunk and plucked a hard bundle of grass, dusted it clean against his foreleg, and stuffed it into his own mouth.
Vantage number 2. You couldn't have done that with a mere smear nose. Don't you think the sun is very hot here?
It is.
And before he thought about what he was doing, he slopped up a scallop of mud from the banks of the great gray green greasy Limpopo and slapped it on his head, where it made a cool sloppy sloshy mud cap all trickled behind his ears.
Vantage number 3. You couldn't have done that with a mere smear nose. Now how do you feel about being spanked again?
Excuse me, but I shouldn't like it at all.
How would you like to spank somebody?
Oh dear, I forgot this part.
I should like it very much indeed.
Well, you'll find that your new nose is very useful to spank people with.
Thank you, I'll remember that. And now I think I'll go home to all my dear family members and tribe. Don't you know, Amanda?
So the Elephant's Child went home across Africa, frisking and whisking his trunk. And when he wanted fruit to eat, he pulled fruit down from a tree instead of waiting for it to fall as he used to do. When he wanted grass, he plucked up grass from the ground instead of going on his knees as he used to do. When the flies bit him, he broke off a branch of a tree and used it as a fly whisk, and he made himself a new, cool, slishy, squashy mud cap whenever the sun was too hot. When he felt lonely walking through Africa, he sang himself down his trunk, and the noise was louder than several brass bands.
He went especially out of his way to find a broad hippopotamus and spanked her very hard to make sure that bicolored python rock snake had spoken the truth about his new trunk.
The rest of the times, he picked up red melon rinds that he had dropped on his way to the Limpopo, for he was a tiny pachyderm. One dark evening, when he came back to all his dear families, he oiled up his trunk and said,
How do you do?
I'm delighted to see you. Come here.
Oh yes, do come here right now.
Come here and be spanked for your satiable curiosity.
Yes, yes, oh my yes, spanked for your satiable curiosity.
Who? I don't think you peoples know anything about spanking, but I do, and I'll show you.
Oh, bananas! Where did you learn that trick? And what have you done with your nose?
I got a new one from the crocodile on the banks of the great gray green greasy Limpopo River. I asked him what he had for dinner, and he gave me this to keep.
It looks very ugly.
It does, but it's very useful.
Then that Elephant's Child spanked all his dear family members for a long time, till they were very warm and greatly astonished. He pulled out his tall aunt, the ostrich's great tail feathers, caught his tall uncle, the giraffe, by the tail, by the hind leg, and dragged him through a thorn bush.
And he shouted at his broad aunt, the hippopotamus, and blew bubbles into her ears when she was sleeping in the water after meals.
I certainly feel as if I'm getting a raw deal here.
At last, Things grew so exciting, his dear families went off one by one in a hurry for the bank of his great green sea Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees, to borrow new noses from the crocodile. When they came back, nobody spanked anybody anymore. Ever since that day, oh, best beloved, all elephants you will ever see, besides all those that you won't, will have trunks precisely like that of the satiable elephant's child.
Hear and attend and listen, for this befell and behappened to me came and was. O best beloved, when the tame animals were wild, the dog was wild, the horse was wild, the cow was wild, and the sheep was wild, and the pig was wild as wild can be. And they walked in the wet wild woods by their wild lones. But the wildest of all the wild animals was the cat. She walked by herself, and all places were alike to her.
Of course, the man was wild too, who was dreadfully wild. He didn't even begin to sing till he met the woman, and she told him,
I do not like living in your wild ways here,
She picked out a nice dry cave
instead of a heap of wet leaves.
to lay down in, and she strewed clean sand on the floor and lit a fire of wood at the back of the cave, and she hung a dry wild horse skin, tail down, across the opening of the cave. And she said,
Wipe your feet, dear, when you come in, and now we'll keep house.
No, wait just a minute. I don't like the way women are being deceived in this story. It's a stereotype.
Oh, Amanda, our best beloved Rudyard was simply a man of his time. He didn't know any better.
Oh, you're an expert on this subject?
Yes, please proceed with the story.
That night, oh best beloved, the man and woman ate wild sheep roasted on the hot stones and flavored with wild garlic and wild pepper, and wild duck stuffed with wild rice, and I, the man, cooked it all. Does that make you happy, Amanda?
Very.
Then the man went to sleep in front of the fire, ever so happy.
Figures.
Amanda,
But the woman sat up, combing her hair.
Figures.
oh, stop acting like adults. The woman took the bone of the shoulder of mutton, the big flat blade bone, and she looked at the wonderful marks on it, and she threw more wood on the fire. She made a magic, the first singing magic in the world.
Out in the wet wild woods, all the wild animals gathered together where they could see the light of a fire a long way off, and they wondered what it meant.
The wild horse stamped his wild foot and said,
O my friends and O my enemies, why have the man and the woman made the great light in the great cave, and what harm will it do us?
Wild Dog lifted up his wild nose and smelt the smell of the roast mutton and said,
I will go up and see and look and say, for I think it's good. Cat, come with me.
Meaning, I am the cat who walks by herself, and all places are alike to me. I will not come.
Then we'll never be friends again.
All places are alike to me. Why should I not go to see and look, and come away at my own liking? I will slip after Wild Dog softly, very softly, and hide myself where I can hear everything.
When Wild Dog reached the mouth of the cave, he lifted up the dried horse skin with his nose and sniffed the beautiful smell of the roast mutton. The woman looked at the blade bone, heard him, and laughed and said,
Here comes the first wild thing out of the woods. What do you want?
O enemy and wife of my enemy, what is this that smells so good in the wild woods?
Wild thing out of the wild woods, taste and try.
O enemy and wife of my enemy, give me another.
Wild thing out of the wild woods, help my man to hunt through the day and guard this cave at night, and I will give you as many roast bones as you need.
Ah, this is a very wise woman, but she is not so wise as I am.
O my friend and wife of my friend, I will help your man to hunt through the day, and at night I will guard your cave.
Ah, that is a very foolish dog.
Then the cat went back through the wet wild woods, waving her wild tail and walking by her wild lones, but she never told anybody. When the man woke up, he said,
What is Wild Dog doing here?
His name is not Wild Dog anymore, but the first friend, because he will be our friend for always and always and always. Take him with you when you go hunting.
Next night, the woman cut great green armfuls of fresh grass from the water meadows and dried it before the fire so that it smelt like new mown hay. She sat by the mouth of the cave and plattered a halter on a horse hide, and she looked at the shoulder of mutton bone, at the big broad blade bone, and she made a magic. She made the second singing magic in the world. Out in the wet wild woods, all the wild animals wondered what had happened to the wild dog, and at last Wild Horse stamped his wild foot and said,
I will go and see and say why Wild Dog has not returned. Cat, come with me.
Nini, I am the cat who walks by herself, and all places are alike to me. I will not come.
But all the same, she followed Wild Horse softly, very softly, and hid herself where she could hear everything. When the woman heard Wild Horse tripping and stumbling on his long mane, she laughed and said,
Here comes the second. All things out of the wild woods, what do you want?
Oh, my enemy and wife of my enemy, where is the wild dog?
Wild thing out of the wild woods, you did not come here for wild dog, but for the sake of this good grass.
That is true. Give it to me to eat.
Wild thing out of the wild woods, bend your wild head, and where would I give you? And you shall eat the wonderful grass 3 times a day.
This is a very clever woman, but she is not so clever as I am.
Wild Horse bent his wild head, and the woman slipped the plaited hide halter over it, and the Wild Horse breathed on the woman's feet and said,
O my mistress and wife of my master, I will be your servant for the sake of the wonderful grass.
That is a very foolish horse.
And the cat went back through the wet wild woods waving her wild tail and walking by her wild lawns. But she never told anybody. When the man and the dog came back from hunting, the man said,
What is Wild Horse doing here? His name is not Wild Horse anymore, but the first servant, because he will carry us from place to place for always and always and always, right on his back when you go hunting.
Next day, holding her wild head high that her with horns should not catch in the wild trees, Wild Cow came up to the cave, and the cat followed and hid herself just the same as before, and everything happened just the same as before, and the cat said the same things as before. And when the wild cat promised to give her milk to the woman every day in exchange for the wonderful grass, the cat went back through the wet wild woods waving her wild tail and walking by her wild lawn. She did just the same as before, but she never told anybody.
Her name is not Wild Cow anymore, but the giver of good food. She will give us the warm white milk for always and always and always, and I will take care of her while you and the first friend and the first servant go hunting.
Next day, the cat walked up to see if any of the wild things would go up to the wild cave, but she never moved in the wet wild woods. So the cat walked there by herself, and she saw the light of the fire in the cave, and she smelt the smell of the warm white milk.
Oh, my enemy and wife of my enemy, where did Wild Cow go?
Wild thing out of the wild woods, go back to the woods again, for I have braided up my hair and I have put away the magic blade bone, and we have no more need of either friends or servants in our cave.
I am not a friend, and I am not a servant. I am the cat who walks by herself, and I wish to come into your cave.
Then why did you not come with the first friend on the first night?
Has Wild Dog told tales of me?
You are the cat who walks by herself, and all places are alike to you. You are neither a friend nor servant. You have said it yourself. Go away and walk by yourself in all places alike.
Must I never come into the cave? Must I never sit by the warm fire? Must I never drink the warm white milk? You are very wise and very beautiful. You should not be cruel, even to a cat.
I knew I was wise, but I did not know I was beautiful, so I will make a bargain with you. If ever I say one word in your praise, you may come into the cave.
And if you say 2 words in my praise?
I never shall, but if I say 2 words in your praise, you may sit by the fire in the cave.
And if you say 3 words?
I never shall, but if I say 3 words in your praise, you may drink the warm white milk 3 times a day for always and always and always.
Now let the curtain at the mouth of the cave, and the fire at the back of the cave, and the milk pots that stand beside the fire, remember what my enemy and the wife of my enemy has said.
And she went away through the wet wild woods, waving her wild tail and walking by her wild lawn.
That night, when the man and the horse and the dog came home from hunting, the woman did not tell them of the bargain that she had made with the cat, because she was afraid that they might not like it.
I went far and far away and hid myself in the wet wild woods by my wild lone for a long time, till the woman forgot all about me.
Only the bat, the little upside-down bat that hung inside the cave, knew where Cat hid. And every evening, Bat would fly to Cat with news of what was happening. There is a baby in the cave. He is new and pink and fat and small, and the woman is very fond of him.
Ah, but what is the baby fond of?
She is fond of things that are soft and tickle. She is fond of warm things to hold in her arms when he goes to sleep. She is fond of being played with. She is fond of all those things.
Ah, then my time has come. Then the cat put out his patty paw and patted the baby on the cheek, and it cooed, and the cat rubbed against its fat knees and tickled under its chin with her tail. And the baby laughed, and the woman heard him and smiled.
O my host and wife of my host and mother of my host's daughter, a wild thing from the wild woods is most beautifully playing with your baby.
A blessing on that wild thing, whoever she may be, for I was a busy woman this morning, and she had done me a service.
O my enemy, and wife of my enemy, and mother of my enemy, it is I, for you have spoken a word in my praise. Now I can sit within the cave forever, for always and always and always. But still, I am the cat who walks by herself, and all places are alike to me. O my enemy, and wife of my enemy, and mother of my enemy, take a strand of thread that you are spinning and tie it to your spinning coral, and drag it along the floor, and I will show you a magic that shall make your baby laugh as loudly as he is now crying.
I will do so because I am at my wit's end, but I will not thank you for it.
Now I will sing the baby a song that shall keep him asleep for an hour.
That was wonderfully done. No question, but you are very clever, O cat.
O my enemy, and wife of my enemy, and mother of my enemy, it is I, for you have spoken a second word in my praise. Now I can sit by the warm fire at the back of the cave, for always and always and always. But still, I am the cat who walks by herself, and all places are alike to me.
Then the woman was very, very angry and let down her hair and put more wood on the fire, and she brought out the broad blade bone of the shoulder of Mutton, and began to make a magic that should prevent her from saying a third word in praise of the cat. It was not a singing magic, best beloved, it was a still magic. And by the cave grew stiller and stiller, and that so still that even a wee mouse crept out of the corner and ran across the floor.
O my enemy, and wife of my enemy, and mother of my enemy, is that little mouse part of your magic?
Oh, no, indeed.
Ah, then the mouse will do me no harm if I eat it.
No, eat it quickly, and I will ever be grateful to you. 100 thanks. Even the first friend is not quick enough to catch little mice as you have done. You must be very wise.
O my enemy, and wife of my enemy, and mother of my enemy, it is I, for you have spoken 3 words in my praise. And now I can drink the warm white milk 3 times a day, for always and always and always. But still, I am the cat who walks by herself, and all places are alike to me.
Oh, cat, you are as clever as any human, but remember that your bargain was not made with the man or the dog, and I do not know what the man or dog can do.
That evening, when the man and the dog came into the cave, the woman told them all the stories of the bargain while the cat sat by the fire and smiled.
Yes, but the cat has not made a bargain with me or with all proper men after me. I take off my 2 leather boots, and I take up my little stone axe that makes 3, and I fetch a piece of wood and a hatchet that is 5 altogether, and I set them out in a row. Now we will make our bargain. If you do not catch mice when you are in the cave for always and always and always, I will throw these 5 things at you whenever I see you, and so shall all proper men do after me.
Oh, this is very clever, cat, but not so clever as my man.
I will catch mice when I am in the cave for always and always and always. But still, I am the cat who walks by herself, and all places are alike to me.
Not when I am near. If you had not said that last, I would have put all these things away for always and always. But now I am going to throw my 2 boots and my little stone axe, that makes 3, at you whenever I meet you. Then so shall all proper men do after me.
Wait a minute. She has not made a bargain with me, or with all proper dogs after me. If you are not kind to the baby while I am in the cave for always and always and always, I will hunt you till I catch you, and when I catch you, I will bite you, and so shall all proper dogs after me.
Oh, this is very clever, Cat, but she is not so clever as the dog.
I will be kind to the baby while I'm in the cave, as long as she does not pull my tail too hard, for always and always and always. But still, I am the cat who walks by herself, and all places are alike to me.
Not when I'm near. If you had not said that last, I would have shut my mouth and for always and always and always. But now I'm going to run you up a tree whenever I meet you, and so shall all proper dogs do after me.
And from that day to this, best beloved, 3 proper men out of 5 will always throw things at cats whenever they meet, and all proper dogs will chase them up trees. But the cat keeps her side of the bargain too. She will kill mice and she will be kind to the baby, but when she is in the house, just as long as she doesn't pull her tail too hard. But when she has done that, and between times when the moon gets up and night comes, she is the cat that walks by herself, and all places are alike to her. Then she goes out to the wet wild woods up by the wet wild tree or the wet wild roofs, waving her wild tail and walking by her wild bones.